So, all right. This is going to be our second lecture on the Gilded Age and the Second Industrial Revolution. And we're going to begin here with a man that needs no introduction, I hope. Thomas Alva Edison, a.k.a. the Wizard of Menlo Park. Now, you may know Edison from, grade school or, like elementary school and wherever you went, or junior high. Some of your other history courses, you've probably talked about Edison and how he invented the light bulb and all of this stuff. And we are going to have a little bit of fun at his expense because it's important that you actually know the real history of America, not just the one that your fourth grade history teacher taught you, because that one's probably not true. And this is a pretty funny, to me, I think it's pretty funny because you see here that you've got this little kitty cat, and he's fishing, and his name is Nikola Tesla. And he's a little fishing, and he's got his little bucket that he's putting his fish in when he catches them. And then here comes Thomas Edison, and he starts fishing out of Nikola Tesla's live well. And so this is kind of funny. Now, it's just to have a little fun at his expense, but, Edison invents the light bulb in 1879, but this is what people are taught, and it's an incredibly important invention. It's really a ubiquitous item in our life. We can't live without it. Living without electricity in our homes and at our work and at our schools and stuff, that would be, basically impossible. But the story of the light bulb really starts almost 70 years before Edison in 1806. A guy named Humphrey Davy was an Englishman who demonstrated a very powerful electric lamp to the Royal Society of London. Now, these are basically just really wealthy people who get together and they decide they're going to sponsor inventions and tinkerers and all of this stuff. And they say, hey, here's what you're working on, give me money. And so it's like Shark Tank, right? Again, Shark Tank. So Humphrey Davy shows up with this electrical light, and it produces illumination by creating these like blinding sparks that are shooting between two charcoal rods, and they bounce back and forth between these two rods and create a very, very, very bright light. This light that happens between these two charcoal rods is actually known as an arc lamp, okay? An arc lamp. Now, an arc lamp, we still use them today. The light is similar to that of a welding torch. It's simply too bright and too hot to be used in like residences and businesses, because also you have like these open sparks, and it's a tremendous power source that usually has to operate these. Batteries would be drained so fast, so you had to invent electric generators that could feed arc lamps. But it was an extreme source of light and power. And they decided, hey, it's a light bulb technically. And so they start using it for the purposes of like lighthouses. Instead of having to this is a very bright light. The bat signal is an arc light, okay? Something that, that like when they have movie premieres and they like shine the lights up, those are arc lights. Well, if they're the big ones, they're arc lights. But so really you've got this invention already. Davies has already kind of invented this electrical light. But the problem is, again, if you were to like have an arc light in here providing us with light, if you were sitting under it, you'd probably like melt. I mean, you're talking about very hot lights, open sparks, quite dangerous, loud, an immense amount of electricity takes to power it. And so the goal becomes, hey, we need to find a way that is safe and energy efficient and something that can be used in a home or a business or by an everyday person. We need to invent a light bulb. And scientists knew that there were ways to kind of do this, that if you passed enough electricity through these materials, that they would heat up and become bright, and that this could be used. But they didn't know exactly how to do that. They didn't know which material to use without it just melting or bursting into flames. And then you end up with a puddle and it's too hot or whatever. So they're going to have to kind of work through this. And there's a lot of inventors that try and do this. They also figure out that, like, if you give it too much oxygen, once you, like, get this metal really hot, if it has access to oxygen, it's going to explode. So, which is why light bulbs today that are not like LEDs, they're vacuum tubes, right? And this is one of the things that Edison kind of shows up with. But actually, he didn't come up with that either, right? His light bulb included that, but he didn't actually come up with that idea either. And I know, you're like, well, what did he do? Well, that's a great question. The guy who actually invented the idea of a vacuum bulb was Frederick Dumoulin, I believe, patented the bulb using the technique that's made out of platinum and carbon sourcing to get a very sophisticated kind of look at it. But he does not go into every single little tiny detail, and it doesn't work really great, but it does work. Thomas Edison comes along and he refines it. Basically, he figures out to keep the wire in the bowl and how to keep it from burning out. He also goes through all these various patents over the past 70 years. He adds vacuum in conjunction with the carbon burner, keep the oxygen level at the right amount. Then a guy named an American inventor, J.W. Starr, and then an English chemist, Joseph Swanee. They patent versions of light bulbs, but they're not, again, they would last for a very short amount of time, then they would pop and go right out. And so Edison, he does end up, finding the right filament, finding the right amount of air, finding the right shape of the glass, finding the right way to do it. So, but he doesn't invent almost any of it. Like, what he invents is the right combination of all the other things people invented. So, you kind of have to put that in perspective. But he is a great inventor in a lot of other respects. He does invent a whole lot of other things, but the light bulb and some of the electrical stuff, he really does piggyback on the back of other inventors and then just improve them. We also see some major innovations in communication. You have a guy named Samuel Morse in 1844. He's going to demonstrate the telegraph. He invents a code to use called Morse Code. And it's a series of dots and dashes. And essentially what he figures out is that I can send an electrical impulse through a copper wire. Do you need to stand up? Through a copper wire, and if that copper wire is hooked up to a speaker on the other end, that electrical impulse will come out and be like boop, or boop, 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 boop. And so if I press this button and it creates a contact point and allows electricity to pass through the wire, and then I let off of it, that amount of electricity will still go through the wire in that length. And when it gets to the speaker, it makes a sound. So then he figures out, well, if I come up with a system to say letters or whatever, I can then go over here and I can say A is one short dot. So hit it, boop, and on the other end it goes boop, and that means the letter A. And then you can go like boop, boop for B. And so now I can go like boop, 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 boop. And I may have just cussed y'all out, but I don't know because I don't do Morse code. So, but it was pretty cool. All of a sudden, he sent a message between Baltimore and the chambers of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. And he sends this code, and he kind of is a little bit dramatic. And in his code, he said, "What hath God wrought?" Because he's like, look what God has allowed us to invent. Dude, get over it. And it really is game-changing. And he's sending it over electrical lines, and now you can get, code from anywhere to anywhere very quickly, as fast as electricity can travel. This is Morse code. Just make sure that you memorize this because I'm going to put one of the quiz questions in Morse code. And JK. I mean, dot, dash, dot, dash. Yeah, and they can do it like literally as fast as I was doing it a second ago. That's like them. They're sitting there like. And on the other side, there's some dude with a paper, and he's listening to that speaker, and he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, oh, what a message, here you go. And that's pretty much how it worked. So basically, the problem is that it's a straight line communication, and it's definitely able to it's susceptible to hacking. Because literally, let's say you're communicating like nuclear codes through a telegraph line. All I got to do is go to that line somewhere, strip a piece off, and hook up my own electrical cord, and I'll get the same current that you're getting. So I can just steal your message. So, well, yeah. But, so there is some military purposes, for this, but it's going to be innovated on pretty quickly. Can you imagine inventing, for thousands of years, the only way to get a message to somebody was write it down and hope you get it to them, or you might get a bird and tie it to their leg and send it off, and you're like, oh, I hope it gets there, or you just hop on a horse, and then all of a sudden, you revolutionize communication. Okay, I mean. After all of that time, the year is now what did I say it was 1844? 1844, you're like, wow, I revolutionized it. I get a message from here to there like this. Oh, I'm incredible. I can send dots and dashes. And then Alexander Graham Bell shows up and he's like, hold my Gatorade. 30 years later. He's like, oh, those dots and dashes, that's cute. I can do a human voice. And how silly do you think Samuel Morse was like, dude, I just invented the coolest thing in communication ever, and you're going to one-up me in 30 years by sending a voice? What a jerk, right? What?
I still don't understand how phones work and stuff like that. It's odd. How does my phone connect to your phone? I called you real quick.
Satellite. Freak.
Goes up, goes
It's
back
weird to think about. I get it, satellite stuff, but
And I can explain it to you.
it's okay.
I'd like to.
I know how it works.
I think you should.
I actually can, but for reals. Did you think, I could tell you how cell phones work.
Sure, yeah, do it.
Okay, so they operate at a certain frequency. So
Wave frequency.
a wave frequency that goes through your antenna, and there's a receiver on a tower close to you that only accepts that frequency. And believe it or not, that frequency is your phone number.
Newton's laws of gravity. Oh, really?
I believe that your phone number is tied to the frequency that your individual phone has, yes. That's how it knows which person to go to. Because you dial it, and it connects to the tower, and it says, accept this frequency and relay it to this frequency. So each phone is different. And so basically, again, I'm not a phone engineer for people that are probably going to comment on my YouTube video about how this is wrong, you moron! Keep your opinions to yourself. Nobody cares what you think, you freaking troll. But essentially, it is on a frequency, it shoots to a tower, and then that tower then relays it, it looks for you. So it broadcasts that signal out until it gets to another tower that your phone is connected to. So this all happens like this. I mean, it's incredible, really. Although it is kind of interesting because we don't know exactly what the latency is on it's pretty low. But essentially, it goes to the tower. That tower, if your cell phone is not connected to that tower, sends it to the nearest tower, the next tower out. And then if it's not connected to that one, it sends it to the next tower out. And if it's not connected to that, it goes to the next tower out until it finds your phone. And then it sends it to your phone, and then you communicate. Once the connection is established through that series of towers, that's how it works.
What about Star 67?
I don't know what that means.
It like covers up your.
It makes your like no color.
What does that have to do with frequency?
That doesn't have to do with the frequency. That just has to do with the idea that, like,
It's just color.
yeah, it
What
just
about
can't.
area code? Now you can call someone else with the same number.
Yeah, right. Because that's where it was issued, I guess. So it's still all tied. I mean, whatever frequency your phone is at, that's like what your whole SIM card does.
What's the area code of China?
It takes your cell phone thing and it connects it. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's kind of interesting. Again, if that's not correct, you stupid YouTube trolls, I don't care. Anyways, Alexander Graham Bell is also a great American icon known for creating the telephone, which he didn't. He also stole that idea. He was just better connected and funded. In fact, he was in a direct competition with another guy who basically came up with and established how to do this first. The funny thing was, though, is that the people that worked in the U.S. Patent Office were allies of Alexander Graham Bell, and they gave him a phone call and said, hey, that guy that you've been competing with, he turned his patent in today, and he figured it out. That one little last thing that you needed to figure it out, he figured it out. Y'all been competing back and forth. This is going to work. He's going to undercut you, because this guy was basically invested in Bell's company, which is a little bit of a conflict of interest. And so he was like, I can't not let him turn it in because that'll be suspicious. But here's what I'm going to do. You come in, bring your patent application, copy the part that you need from him, and then I'll put your application in first. So that we'll issue it to you, and then his will be like, oh, sorry, we already have a patent on that. So literally, Alexander Graham Bell was stuck. He didn't know how to fix it. And then his buddy at the patent office was like, oh, this is how to fix it. Come write it down and copy it, and then you turn it in first, and we'll both get rich. So, in true Redmond fashion, tearing down American icons. One at a time. But he does end up doing this, and, it's pretty crazy. Great job for him, I guess. Throughout 1874-75, he labors both harmonic telegraph and the voice transmitting device. It does pretty much, the first time that he does make a phone call, though, was in his own lab, and he was calling to his assistant, Mr. Watson, and Watson picked up the phone and was like, hey, what happened? And Watson hears him not from hollering, but through the earpiece. And so again, then you have the telephone. Now, Alexander Graham Bell, he was weird. He believed that we should answer the phone by saying ahoy.
What?
Yeah, he hated the word hello. He thought it sounded unrefined. He thought that anybody that answered the phone should be like, ahoy. And so if he had had his way, everybody would have said ahoy when you pick up the phone, which is so dumb. I'm glad that we didn't listen to him. But, we spend a lot of time on our phones. Basically, we have mini computers in our pockets now, which is kind of exponentially grown from what Alexander Graham Bell did. But there you go. You look at the long-distance phone lines in 1898, the purplish color, this color, they're connected, and they similarly follow where the railroads were being at. And slowly it's going to be connected. He invented his company, ended up being called Bell Long Distance, or Bell Telephone Company, which then gets bought out and merges with Southwestern Telephone Company and creates something called Southwestern Bell. And Southwestern Bell then eventually gets bought out by a,
Do we still use it today?
yes, by American Telegraph and Telephone, which you know as AT&T. Yeah. So Southwestern Bell eventually merges and gets purchased by AT&T, which is, but part of the merger they had to keep the original logo, which was a globe with lines going across it, which is why AT&T is still the globe with the blue swooshes across it. That was the original Bell logo. So there you go. Interesting. It's not interesting, but it's knowledgeable. So another one that is going to greatly improve humans' ability to communicate is actually the form of travel. You end up with Model T and Henry Ford. He's a brilliant guy, although he's very controversial. You may not know this, but Henry Ford was a pretty staunch anti-Semite. Not a fan of the Jews, old Henry Ford. And so yeah, he made several anti-Semitic statements during his life, but he was a brilliant industrialist. You know, he also, believe it or not, did not invent the automobile, which I hope nobody actually thought he did. Did anybody believe that Henry Ford invented the automobile? Hopefully, surely at this point in our life, no, you didn't. You thought Henry Ford invented the
You know
automobile?
who else started it? Like he made the thing.
He made the brand Ford, but he did not invent the automobile. That was done several years before. There was actually a group of German scientists led by a guy named Carl Benz. Correct. Carl Benz actually invented the automobile. He was part of a team that invented, I believe the other guy's name was Mercedes, probably. No, but his name was Carl Benz. He really invents the engine and the automobile and the idea of that. What it does do is Henry Ford figures out a way to make it affordable and to put a car in the hands of everybody. And he does invent this idea of the assembly line, where each piece is going to be made over and over and over and over and over by the same worker. And it's going to go down the line, and this worker is responsible for putting the bolts on here. Zip, 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 and then the next car comes along, and you go zip, 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 and then the next car comes along, and you go zip, 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 and then you got 1,000 guys doing one job, and because they only have to do one job, it makes it a lot easier. Also, it made all the cars the same. In fact, and it made it at a price that most people could afford because you didn't have to pay one guy to go make your car for you. So imagine how difficult it would be before this. Every car was individually made. Individually made. So you would basically take an engineer and you'd say, hey, I've got an order for a car. Maybe you have 50 guys or you have 100 or 1,000 guys working for your company, each making cars. And you'd say, hey, here's another order for a car. And that guy goes into his workshop and you give him all the supplies that he needs, and he builds the car, and then he drops it off to you. Great. So, like, Cooper, what's your dream car?
Audi R8.
Okay, so imagine you go, hey, I want an Audi R8. So you go, okay, great. So you call Audi, and you want to order R8. And so before this guy, basically they'd say, okay, so we're going to call Jimbo, and Jimbo's going to put together your R8 for you. Jimbo is a great engineer, so he puts together your Audi R8. And so when it's delivered, it's great. Everything's going good. But then as soon as he finishes building your car and he delivers it to you, and you're like, I love it. Jimbo, his house and workshop get hit by a meteor, and everything disintegrates, and he's killed. Okay? Now, you go, great. That doesn't matter. I already got my car. That's cool. No problem. But then something goes wrong with it. You need to get it fixed, right? And so you go to the Audi dealership and you're like, hey, I need to get my car fixed. Something's making a sound. I don't know what's going on. They look at it, Chesney, hi. Are you doing one of those I'm listening but not paying attention things? Stop it!
I was looking at the price of Fords back in like 19.
Oh, like $100. Okay. So basically, sorry, internet crew. Later on in the years, as I reuse these, Chesney's a person in my class that I regularly have to. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. And Drake's always disrespectful too. So, your R8, you're like, I need to get it fixed, and they go back and they take a look at it and they pop the hood and they're like, oh, did Jimbo make this? You're like, well, yeah, Jimbo. And they're, oh, he was brilliant. You're like, yeah, I'm glad Jimbo did a good job. I love this car. And they go, yeah, here's the problem. Jimbo's dead. And Jimbo, when we gave him contracts to make R8s, he made the best ones. I'm going to be honest, you got one of the best ones. But he didn't exactly follow the plans all the time. He found little ways to make it better. And plus, he used his own tools that he invented, and that's what he used to put your car together. So, and you're like, well, just because he's dead, go get his tools and fix my car. And they're like, yeah, his workshop got hit by a meteor. It's all gone. So, and he was really brilliant. We haven't figured out how to make and recreate those tools yet, so your car's just broken now. Forever. Sorry. You want to buy another one? Right? So here's what I'm saying. Henry Ford changes that. Now all the cars are the same. And the funny joke was that, like, it went from, it would take years, or it might take a month to make a car, to about, 30 minutes to an hour to make one single car. They're coming out. Everybody can afford it. You can sell a ton of them. The joke used to be you can get it in any color you want as long as it's black, right? Because it costs too much money to make different colors. So there you go. Major shifts were taking place. The number of patents that are issued during this time, extremely high. Listen, please. Yeah. It means that you get a patent, and that means that you invented something, and if anybody else is trying to sell something like what you invented, you can go and say, I created this, and sue them, and you win. It basically says you're the inventor, and that nobody can copy it without coming to get your permission first. And so basically, you see the number of patents goes up by, a huge number. By the 1900s to 1909, you're getting 350,000 patents a year. By the 1990s, you're getting about 1.1 million patents a year, right? And so it's crazy how fast this industrialization stuff really explodes and grows by leaps and bounds.